Welcome back to our channel, where true stories and heart-touching moments are shared to inspire and move you. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe and stay with us till the end, because today's story will leave you with goosebumps and perhaps even a tear in your eye. It all began on a rainy evening in New York City. The streets were glistening with raindrops under the faint glow of streetlights, and people hurried to get home before the storm grew stronger. In the midst of the busy crowd, a tall man stepped out of his sleek black car. He was Alexander Cole, a billionaire businessman known for his power, influence, and wealth. Yet, despite his fame, very few people truly knew the man behind the name. Alexander was heading into one of the most prestigious charity events of the year. Dressed in his tailored suit, he carried the air of authority and confidence that made people step aside when he walked. But as he entered the large marble hall, filled with chandeliers and laughter, his eyes caught something unusual. Near the entrance, sitting quietly on the grand staircase, was a little girl. Her clothes were simple, her shoes were worn out, and yet her big brown eyes held a depth that immediately drew him in. She couldn't have been older than 7 or 8. Unlike the other children running around in pretty dresses, she sat alone, her small hands folded neatly on her lap. Alexander paused for a moment, wondering what a child like her was doing in a place like this. Without thinking, he approached her. The girl looked up, her eyes meeting his, and for a brief second, it felt as if time stopped. "Are you lost?" Alexander asked softly. The little girl shook her head. Then, with a voice as delicate as the rain outside, she whispered, "If you carry me upstairs, I'll tell you a secret." Her words were strange, yet there was something so innocent, so fragile, that Alexander felt compelled to listen. Against his usual guarded instincts, he bent down and carefully lifted her into his arms. She was so light, it startled him. As he carried her up the staircase, he noticed how her tiny arms wrapped around his neck, as though she trusted him completely. Once they reached the top, he set her gently on a velvet chair. He knelt down to her level and asked, "What's this secret you wanted to tell me?" The girl leaned closer, her eyes shimmering. "You look strong on the outside," she said, "but inside, you're very lonely." The words pierced through Alexander like a blade. He froze, unable to respond. This child, whom he had never seen before, had spoken the one truth he had buried deep within himself. Behind his wealth, his empire, and his name, loneliness had been his only constant companion. He lived in a mansion filled with silence, attended events surrounded by people yet feeling utterly alone. How do you know that?" he asked, his voice unsteady. The girl gave a faint smile. "Because I'm lonely too." Her confession hit him even harder. He looked at her again, noticing how her small shoes were scuffed, how her dress was slightly torn at the hem, and how her eyes carried both sadness and wisdom far beyond her years. Before Alexander could speak again, a woman rushed toward them. She was one of the event organizers. Breathless, she said, "Oh, thank heavens, you found her. She's part of the children's program tonight. Her name is Lila. She doesn't talk to many people." Alexander turned back to Lila, who was now holding tightly onto his sleeve, as if she didn't want him to leave. Something inside him shifted at that moment. For years, he had measured his life in deals, contracts, and billions, but in that instant, he realized that true wealth might be something entirely different. Throughout the evening, Alexander couldn't keep his eyes off Lila. Whenever he tried to mingle, his thoughts returned to her words. She had seen straight into his heart, and it shook him in a way that boardrooms and negotiations never could. Later, when the program ended, Alexander found her again. She was sitting quietly with a small group of children, but her gaze lit up when she saw him. He walked over and asked gently, "Lila, where is your family?" She lowered her eyes. "I don't have one. I live in the children's home." The billionaire felt his throat tighten. He knew what it meant. She was an orphan, with no parents to tuck her in at night, no one to hold her when she was scared, no one to tell her that she was loved. For the rest of the evening, Alexander stayed by her side. They talked, they laughed, and for the first time in years, he felt a warmth he had long forgotten. As he drove home that night, her words echoed in his mind, "If you carry me upstairs, I'll tell you a secret." But he realized that it wasn't just her secret. It was his truth too. He was lonely, and so was she. Perhaps fate had brought them together to heal one another. In the weeks that followed, Alexander visited Lila often at the children's home. He brought books, toys, and little gifts, but more importantly, he brought his time. He listened to her stories, her dreams, and her laughter. Slowly, the empty silence in his mansion began to feel unbearable compared to the joy of hearing her giggle. Months later, Alexander made a decision that shocked many. The billionaire who once lived only for wealth and power chose to adopt Lila. The day he signed the papers, she looked at him with tears in her eyes and whispered, "Does this mean I finally have a family?" He hugged her tightly and said, "No, it means we both finally have one." From that day forward, the lonely billionaire and the little girl who carried secrets became each other's greatest treasure. He no longer walked into a cold, empty house. Instead, he came home to laughter, drawings taped to the refrigerator, and a child who reminded him every day what love truly meant. And as for Lila, she no longer sat alone on staircases, waiting for someone to notice her. She had a father, a protector, and someone who saw her not as a responsibility but as a miracle. So the next time you see a child or even a stranger with eyes that tell a story, remember this: sometimes the smallest voices carry the biggest truths. And sometimes, carrying someone upstairs is the first step to carrying them forever in your heart. Thank you for watching. If this story touched you, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming stories like this. Don't forget to share it with someone who needs a little reminder that love, kindness, and connection are worth more than all the riches in the world.